Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
All right, everybody. It's another new episode of the Whole Athlete, sometimes the Whole Triathlete podcast, kind of mixing it up so we can help you improve your performance in your favorite sports, running or triathlons. Today is kind of our topic. Our focus is talking to Angus, the co-founder of Stryd Power, and we're going to talk about how we can get faster running, because we all want to get faster. And as we get older, we want to train perhaps maybe a little differently, maybe a little more smarter, so we can keep improving our times with this new technology. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Debbie. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk with you.
So I talk to you guys every day when I was in Kona, because I walked by there about 5 times a day. And we did do a 5-minute little video on the Whole Triathlete YouTube channel. You can get a little short intro to what this is. But now I wanted to dive in a little deeper. So we're going to kind of talk half hour about running and Stryd Power and how that can help us as athletes. So let's get started. I love asking people how you got into this. What's your passion and your purpose, and why?
Personally, I just love running. How we got into the business of making Stryd and power meters for runners. We're based here in Boulder, and we're a team of technology guys that were working on cool technology here out of the university. And Boulder's known for having a lot of triathletes, and we slowly became ingrained with the community, and we started showing them a really cool technology. But they said, there's not much we can do with this. Can you guys report something similar to power? Because that is what's really insightful for us when we're training on the bike. And that would be, that'd be a huge problem solver for us on the run, because on different Ironman courses, they all present unique challenges. I don't necessarily know how to pace myself up and down hills. I'd like to see how my power responds as I fatigue. So we started learning from the triathletes and saying they have a lot of problems, and power really is the best metric to quantify athletic performance. So can we deliver something similar to them on the run?
So I think we've all heard about, over the years, people getting into cycling and measuring their power, their watts when they're cycling, and using that hopefully with the heart rate monitor to figure out how strong a fit they're getting, as well as how to train, and downloading that information into their Garmin, into Training Peaks, using Strava. But this is, we always needed a way to figure out how to get faster running. So training by heart rates, what we've always done, doing the Maffetone formula, the 180 miles per age, and figure out where we're needing to train to build that aerobic engine and not go anaerobic, then when we need to do speed work. So this is what the kind of the missing piece was to really improving performance for the triathlete or the runner.
Absolutely. And when we met in Kona, one of the big things we were doing in Kona was specifically race planning. And that's where we really see this technology make its biggest jump in terms of results. We had hundreds of athletes in Kona coming by that are Run with Power users, coming to chat with us and saying, how can I plan for the challenges on Kona, or how can I adapt my race plan for the humidity, heat, and overall difficulty of the Kona course? So that was one of our big focuses there at the event, was looking at people's run data and saying, this is what you should target, and this is how you can specifically reach your peak performance on this day if you target this power level and power target.
I know my friend Diana Hassel, that usually is first or second or third in Ironman Hawaii every year, and she was walking to the award ceremony the day after the Ironman Hawaii race, and she was showing me her data from her Ironman race and uploading it into her program, but she had it on her phone. So got a lot of amazing athletes that are really doing well in their age group. How let's talk about what is measuring power for running, because I know people know watts for cycling. So how do we do it, and how does Stryd work to create power?
That's a great question. So Stryd, it's a foot pod that sits on top of your shoe. So it's really compatible with any shoe. You can easily just clip it on and switch over between shoes. So it's very easy to install on top of the shoe. And it's essentially measuring your motion. It's all motion based. So it's measuring the footpath in extreme precision. And this is compared to maybe a bike power meter where you install it on a certain bike and it sits there and it measures the amount of force that's going through the machine. But Stryd is once again very easy to move between shoes, and it's measuring essentially your motion. And from the motion, we can get power. And then functionally, it's used very similar to the bike power meter, because on the bike power meter, you're setting an FTP, or like a critical power, and then you're doing the same for running. You're setting a critical power and then establishing training zones. And then from those training zones, you can perform structured training and then use those structured training zones to improve over time.
So do you do a base test that, you do for, well, we talked to Pinoe the other week and talk about metabolic efficiency testing with that. So how can we test, like do a monthly test with this to figure out, just saying, how we can improve and have that baseline data? What type of tests do you do?
Yeah, so like on a cycling power meter, the first thing you always want to do is set that FTP. So you go out and maybe there's a bunch of different tests with cycling. You can do a 1 hour test, or you can do a 20-minute test and then do an estimate based on that. And that's essentially establishing your performance as an athlete, so you can establish those training zones. So when you go out and train, you say, I'm going to do an easy workout today. You're targeting a wattage that really guarantees that you are in an easy zone. Or if you're doing a hard workout, you want to know what your floors and your ceilings are, so you're really getting benefit from that workout. So with Stryd, you just do a simple 3-minute run and then a 9-minute run, and you're establishing that critical power and then getting the zones. So you really are benefiting when you train in those zones. You know how you're benefiting, and you're really following the right structured training.
So zones aren't your heart rate; those are your power zones, like an FTP test. And so you're figuring out their power zones are based, kind of correlates with their heart rate zones?
So if a runner is familiar with heart rate based training, the concept is going to be very similar for Stryd. So let's say you have a set of 5 heart rate zones. Let's say you have a high zone 5, a lower zone 1. And then you have a training plan that says, well, today you're going to do 1 mile in zone 4, and you're going to do 4 of these repeats. So what power allows you to do is essentially just keep using the same training plan and establish zones that are going to achieve a better training effect simply by training the power zones compared to the heart rate zones. So for example, during a workout, your heart rate zone might drift, and you might start moving into zone 5. So you think it's actually right to take the intensity down. This could be the wrong conclusion, because the power is going to give you the insight in saying that you're actually in the right zone. The heart rate was simply drifting before, so it was actually wrong to take the intensity down simply due to other third-party factors. The heart rate zone has changed, or it's gone up. So essentially with the power zones, you can just swap those in for your heart rate zones and get better desired training effects.
Yeah, because if we're trying to do endurance training, we want to keep down in the lower end. And then when we're doing our specific workouts for interval training, that would be beneficial as well, to kind of put the power with that heart rate zone, combine it a little bit, or just to maybe go by heart rate and then see if you're improving by looking at your speed and your power and your heart rate.
That's and Debbie, can you see my screen still? I can show a workout that better illustrates.
So if you guys go to our YouTube channel, the whole athlete podcast page on YouTube, you'll get to see a visual aid for the Stryd Power analysis, what we're looking at. So it might make more sense to listen to the podcast, but then when you're at home, not driving your car, working out outside, that you can go see what he's going to show us here. So
absolutely. So this is going to, the workout I'm going to show you is going to show those correlations between the power and the heart rate that we just talked about here. So you can see a section of about 20 repeats right here in this workout, and I'm going to zoom in here, and in the orange you can see the power that's being produced, and in the purple you can see the heart rate that's being produced. And just by visually looking at this, you can see the power is pretty consistent and constant over each of these intervals. And then when you start looking at the heart rate, you can see that it is reflecting the effort, but at the same time it's also taking a while for the athlete to kind of reach that right heart rate zone. So for example, let me choose an interval in here, and you can see the athlete did essentially a 30-second or around 40-second effort here, and you can see by the end of the interval the heart rate finally reaches kind of its peak there, and then the athlete stops the interval. So the power is essentially give us that guide from the very first second that the athlete's hitting the right zone. And then you can see the heart rates give us insight if, and I'll zoom back out here to better illustrate this, but the heart rate's kind of giving us the insight on how the body's responding. Is how long is it taking for it to reach that proper heart rate, or how long is it taking for us that heart rate to go down after the zone is complete?
That's great. So you can go by tracking your improvements more, so analyzing your workouts post-session and be able to see your progress. Because I think a lot of people need to have baseline data and have specific race goals and have a specific focus to each workout, that each workout has a purpose, what you're trying to achieve, than a garbage workout or overtraining or doing something, doing too much high intensity training or high heart rate zones. Okay, so then talk to us how we can use this. So that's for interval training. What about just someone training for the long run where they want to keep a low heart rate? How can we use this for pacing ourselves so we don't go too high or too fast too early?
And that's a very good question. This is what we see often come in the context of a race, where that heart rate is taking a second to pick up. So in that at the start of a workout or the start of a race, the athlete has great confidence. They're very excited on race day. They want to go out hard. So during the first few minutes of that race, that athlete can overexert themselves until the heart rate picks up and their body can really feel the effort. So I pulled up another workout here, and this is a race I did. In this race, I actually wasn't wearing a watch or looking at any of my data. I was simply just going out to go run the race. I didn't have any guidance. And you can see here that over this 10K workout or 10K race here, I started out too hard. You can see over the first, from the starting point until 20 minutes into the race, my power is consistently and constantly dropping because I used too much of that power during the first 5 or 6 minutes of the workout. My body became fatigued and I couldn't keep producing the same power output. So you can see this race was actually pretty difficult for me because I didn't pace myself. So simply from having that power measurement from the very first step or very first few minutes of a workout or race, you're making sure that you don't ruin the race or the workout in the first 1 or 2 minutes, that you can keep that effort consistent. So let me contrast this with another race I did, and it'll be this one here. Let me turn the power measurement on, and you can see the power measurement in the orange here is far more consistent throughout this workout. And I actually finished the race 8 minutes faster, and I wasn't fatigued in the end of the race, suffering like is often common between athletes that overexert themselves. So what I'm really getting at here is those first few minutes of a workout or race can be crucial for making sure that your effort is dialed in right, so you don't ruin the rest of an hour-long race or an hour-long workout workout just in the first 120 seconds.
That's interesting. So what about if you are trying to measure your efficiency, that we want to get faster at that lower heart rate? And if sometimes like, hey, I want to keep my heart rate at 130, would you do that, like trying to keep a certain power and kind of work on breathing and relaxing while you're running and running tall and try to change your pace or how you're running, how you're feeling, how you're landing, your mechanics to get that power up higher? Does that ever work?
Absolutely. Let me open up another workout here, and I'll zoom in here so we get a good insight. So on the bike, for most triathletes, anybody familiar on the bike, it's really about two things. It's about intensity and it's about the aerodynamics. So essentially they can gain free speed if they're more aerodynamic. With running, it's about two things as well. It's about running intensity and it's about biomechanics. And if your biomechanics are good, you can essentially get free speed or free power, or in this case that we're talking about, free heart rate. So you really want to understand, where is that power coming from? Is the power coming from, as such on the bike, is it coming from the aerodynamics and that they're generating more power because it's not being pulled away due to drag? Or in running, is it being produced simply because the biomechanics are better? So once again, we can see in this activity, you can see the power is pretty consistent, pretty constant in the orange here. And let me turn on a metric called leg spring stiffness.
Yeah. Wow.
So leg spring stiffness is going to be a metric that not many runners are familiar with because it's new to the world of running. So let me describe this in terms that are easily understandable. Imagine if I had a rubber ball and I throw it down the hallway. The rubber ball is going to bounce and it's going to return energy as it bounces down the hallway, but eventually it's going to start to die out. It's going to start to lose that energy. So the best runners really in the world are kind of like the rubber ball, but they don't start dying out at the end. They're able to keep recycling that energy. So, how does a runner recycle energy? Whenever they impact on the ground, all of their muscles and all of their tendons load up with that energy, and it's all released as they leave the ground. And if you're not a very strong or efficient runner, those muscles are going to start fatiguing towards the end of the run, and they're not going to be able to effectively recycle that energy. So specifically looking at this activity, you can see that the pink line here starts out pretty high and that the runner is very efficient and effective at the start of the workout, but towards the end of the workout, you can see that effectiveness is going down and that the runner's having to work harder to maintain the same power because they're getting less of that for free. So when we're talking about power in relation to heart rate, it's, are you having to produce more of that power, or is that power coming to you for free because you're bouncing like that rubber ball does? And that's really what we're looking at in terms of efficiency and effectiveness for a runner.
So how can you see this data if you're trying to work on your efficiency and working on maybe nasal breathing and different tricks to improve your running efficiency while you're in the workout? Because I see you download the information to your app, or is it on a Garmin, or where can we see it while we're running if we don't want to carry our cell phone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Stryd is going to connect with all of your standard sports watches and smartwatches. So if you have a Garmin, a Suunto, a Polar, or even an Apple Watch, Stryd's going to be providing this real-time power feedback to you in the middle of a workout. And most of these watches are also capable of displaying your heart rate and other metrics. So on a single screen, you can have your power and heart rate there, and you can start comparing these. If you're keeping a constant power, is that heart rate staying constant? Is it going down? Is it starting to raise up? And then during the runner has to think to themselves and say, why am I seeing these changes? What going on with my form or my breathing is causing these changes to take place? So it is a very seamless system that Stryd's going to integrate with the tools you already have, and you can already use your pre-existing watch, your pre-existing heart rate monitor to start monitoring the trends you're talking about, Debbie.
Can you upload to Training Peaks if you want to get all the data into one program?
Yes, exactly. So if you have a Garmin watch, you can hook the Stryd in right to the run mode on your watch, and then essentially once you finish, that data is going to auto sync to Training Peaks like it always does. So if you have a coach, your coach is going to see that on Training Peaks and analyze the power data. Or if you analyze it yourself, that's just all going to be on the platform. And we're not really adding anything new. It's going to be a big addition to what you already are familiar with and how you're already training.
Okay. So if we're doing a monthly test and we're trying to, see if we can get faster at, say, MAF heart rate, max aerobic function, those that haven't heard many interviews with MAF Fatona on the show early on, but 180 minus your age plus or minus 5 beats. That's what we often go by to start, unless you get a metabolic efficiency test with Newly for metabolic efficiency test by Pinoy we talked to them about. So we've got, say, I want to keep getting faster, 130 heart rate to 140 heart rate. How does this help, and what type of testimonials have you had to get people to get faster using this device?
Absolutely. So for a race like Kona, I clued on it earlier. We like to go to these big races such as Kona, and we were just at the New York City Marathon. We could go and we've also gone to London and Boston last year. And essentially what we do is we bring kind of our top minds, top guys within Stryd that can analyze the data and look at the data and really understand, what is the athlete's expected performance. And we put them there at the expo, and we solicit our entire user base, and we say, please come by and please chat with us. We want to look at your data. We want to see if your race expectations are lining up with what your power and your data says you're capable of doing. So when we're looking at performance in terms of Stryd, we're really looking at in race conditions where people really want to be performing and saying, if their expectations are too high, we're going to dial back their power target and say, you should recalibrate your thinking. You should say that, 300 watts is maybe the max power you can maintain over this marathon. Or if they're running a triathlon, saying, well, we don't know if you've properly evaluated train, you're actually probably capable of more than you think you are because you've been putting in so much high quality work since your last race. So we can really guide people to either dial back their expectations and say, I'm going to have a more successful day if I have less ambitious targets, or dial up their expectations and say that your training is really indicating that you're doing much, much better than your last race indicated. So we're really all about trying to see in real world conditions, how can we maximize and reach that peak performance on race day?
Yeah, I'm sure it would help you to figure out pacing, but in training workouts, I see your information on the screen doesn't have heart rate. And I've just used heart rate forever. And so I'm always kind of go by that. Do you not go by, when you're going for a run, how do you pace yourself? Do you pace from this just your power or your speed, or what do you do?
So I'm pulling up another workout here, and this is an 8-mile activity. And actually, let me go to a different screen here.
Wow. If you like data, you guys would get into this, because if you look on the web, the video version, you've got tons of information on here for those data geeks. Holy moly.
With that workout I just showed, that was around an 8-mile run, and that had a certain amount of wattage. I tried to maintain an average wattage over that run. So at this screen here, we're looking at all my training mapped out over time. So if I'm going for an 8-mile run or like a 70-minute run, I'm looking and saying, what have I maintained in the past? So I'm pulling up the amount of runs I've done in the past and saying, I haven't really done, I've done a few runs at 70 plus minutes, and during those runs I've really only maintained around 240, and there's one up here at like 270. But you can see as I move my mouse around, I can see the amount of runs I've done at that wattage before. So I'm saying if I'm doing a long run, what is that maximum wattage I can hold and average over that entire distance? So I have the proper expectations when I go out and run, and saying if I'm holding 300 watts or over 300 watts for this 8-mile run, I'm probably not going to be able to finish. I'm probably going to have to do a bit of walking. I'm probably going to be very exhausted. So simply by looking at the max amount of watts I can hold over a certain duration, I know exactly what I'm capable of and what my expectations should be for a certain workout.
Because I think so many people do too high of heart rate when they're training. If you're trying to build endurance specifically and do too much of that black hole training. So I think it's good information to figure out what is your power and your heart rate and pace, the combination, because so many people I know on the bike would do that. They'd be only going by power, but they're anaerobic the whole time and just working at their AT level versus building that aerobic engine, staying below that because you're only going by power. So have you found that, it helps people for that are endurance athletes to train smarter, not just because so many people just stay in that middle to too high of zone, but learning how to get the most out of their workouts?
No, absolutely. So that's really like the purpose of like these power zones and after the fact analysis, and saying, if I'm going to go do a long run, I can do that. I can do that run at a pretty high intensity. Like, I can run it like just slightly below race pace and probably feel okay and not too tired. But I think what you're alluding to, Debbie, is that really that long run should be at a much lower intensity, because if I keep training those high intensities, I'm really banging at my body. I'm just training at that same race pace that I've always been used to. I'm not really able to push the needle forward. So, for example, if I'm doing a ton of runs right at race pace, I'm really just training to do that race again at the same pace. So I need to be doing lower intensity runs, allowing my body to recover, than doing higher intensity runs. So then I can actually push the needle forward when I actually go do the next race. So the power zones are helping you reflect on that and making sure that you're actually training in the right zones.
Good. And hopefully doing some recovery, easy stuff in between, and measuring your heart rate variability so you're recovered before you go do the next workout. So next question for you, with Pnoe and other types of metabolic efficiency, how have you worked with them for putting it all together to test people with that equipment?
So earlier I described the critical power test, and the critical power test is good because it just requires a stride, and you can head out to a track and kind of establish those zones. But for a lot of athletes, the critical power test is still like a pretty hard thing to do on your own, because if I say go run a maximum effort for 3 minutes, then go run a maximum effort for 9 minutes, most athletes aren't going to have a good idea on the amount of power they can hold. They might mispace it. And if you can't properly do the critical power test, then your training zones are going to be wrong, and then the purpose of this technology kind of falls apart. So when we work with companies like Pnoe, if you want a full solution from A to Z, and you're not necessarily the most experienced athlete in the world, you can go to a coach that has a system like Pnoe, or go to a lab that has a system like Pnoe, and essentially just run. And with that additional data, with that additional oxygen consumption data, we can establish those zones with extreme precision, and it doesn't require a lot of the hard work that goes into doing the critical power test, because you can simply put this mask on, go for a run, and they get the exact right zones for your physiology and for your fitness. So it's giving essentially an easy way to reach a high degree of accuracy in your training without much additional effort.
So did I miss any questions? Anything else we need to cover before we kind of go into where to find you and how to order it and all that kind of good stuff?
I think probably the last thing I wanna talk about is for triathletes. it's really hard to know to pace a triathlon well, because you have the swim. The swim, most people I think can handle pretty well, and then you have kind of the trade-off between the bike and the run. Sometimes you have really good cyclists who just say, I'm going to go all out on the bike and then I'm just going to try and survive the run. Or you have really good runners who say, I'm going to hold back on the bike and then go out all out on the run. And that might play to their specific strengths, but are they properly balancing? Are they properly balancing the two disciplines? For example, usually the right answer is kind of in an intermediate fashion on saying, if I hold back on the bike and I hold back on the run a little, I could produce a better time than simply going all out on one or the other. So when you have this power number, when you have the power measurements inside of running now, you can kind of pick the exact wattage target that's going to balance both disciplines and maximize the amount of speed you can get out of each discipline. So, for example, if I go do a hard bike ride, then I come back and I do a run immediately after the bike ride, I can look at my power target and say, I just can't maintain a strong power if I bike that hard. But if I just take the bike wattage down 10 watts and I raise the running wattage up maybe 20 watts, I'm going to finish with an overall faster time. So for triathletes, it kind of answers that question saying, how do I balance these two? How do I actually reach the fastest triathlon and not just the fastest run or the fastest bike split?
Yeah. So much information, and those that like to analyze the workouts and figure out how to get faster, stronger, and more efficiency, I think this is an excellent accessory to add to your run. So how do people buy one? You just go to your website, and how do they get all set up?
Absolutely. So with a product like this, you can see that a lot of the stuff, it's not stuff you're going to open up the box and say, this is all going to be like, I'm just going to put Stryd in my shoe, I'm going to run faster from day one. It's not like that. It's not like you just put on a pair of shoes and you feel you're immediately going to run faster. But that said, it does require work, and if you're willing to put the time and effort in, you really can achieve fantastic results, such as the work that I talked about earlier here, where I ran 8 minutes faster in a 10K simply through optimal pacing. A lot of people are capable of a lot more than they actually perform if they simply optimize how they train and how they race, and it doesn't require a lot of additional effort. So but it does require some additional effort, and it requires a careful eye. So with Stryd, we do only sell on our website at stryd.com, but along with this is that you're getting a very guided experience directly from the creators of the technology, and you're able to talk to the creators of the technology directly. So you make sure you're using the technology right and for whatever your goal is, and you're getting the maximum benefit out of the kind of training you're doing. So just to recap that, we sell directly on our website at stryd.com, and you're getting a very hands-on solution directly from us and directly from our software that's guiding you to the right solution. It won't be instant, but with a bit of effort, you can get massive results.
And it's spelled STRYD, Stryd.com. So do you have seminars and educational webinars online, and you're in Boulder? So what type of education are you doing to keep people learning all this new data on here?
Oh, absolutely. So with a lot of what you heard me talk about is good. And if you want to go a level deeper, if you visit our YouTube channel and just search Stryd on YouTube, we have a series of great webinars called Watts That Won. And what these Watts That Won videos are doing is they're showing you how to race plan for a running race, a trail race, a triathlon race, and you're going to learn exactly how this technology will be benefit to your scenario for whatever goal you have. You're going to get a unique solution that's really going to be tailored to you and benefits you by watching these webinars.
Good deal. Well, great stuff. Thank you so much for your time today. And you can sign up for your blog through the website, and lots of good information comes through there. And social media, you guys are on Facebook, Instagram?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like you just said, Debbie, the best place to definitely get more information and is going to be at our newsletters. So if you visit stryd.com and then just go to our join our newsletter page, you're going to be getting daily updates from the Stryd team that is telling you how we're progressing, how this technology is going to benefit you, and it's really gonna peel back the layers and see where this technology really makes a difference.
Well, this is a great tool to add into your arsenal and to help transform the whole you in your training program next year for 2019 is coming up. And, I know we're always, running's a big thing for people to how to get better and get off the bike and be able to run well. So something for triathletes and marathoners and long distance 50K races, I think it's really essential information to implement into your training peaks as a coach with your athletes, as well as for just people that like to geek out and pay attention to their quality and efficiency of their workouts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie.
All right. So if you guys have any questions, head to our Facebook page, The Whole Athlete Podcast, and anything else. You can find more information in the show notes. We'll put links and more information in there, how you can just click on their website and get started on learning more. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.